네, 안녕하세요. 저 건국대학교의 권남 교수입니다. 조금 저희가 생각했던 것보다 굉장히 많은 청중들이 오셔서 저희가 굉장히 뜻깊게 생각합니다. 이 어려운 상황을 딛고 와주셔서 뜻깊게 생각하고요. 오늘 아까 홍대식 교수님 말씀하신 대로 나진이 교수님이 직접 참석을 못하셔서 조금 특이한 이런 형태의 세션을 만들게 됐는데요. 그래도 한번 좀 어떻게 보면 좀 흥미로운 그런 세션이라고도 볼 수 있겠습니다. 아까 이제 부탁이 왔는데요. 동시통역기를 이용하시는 분들은 채널 1번을 눌러주시면 그러면 이제 동시통역이 된다고 합니다. 부탁드리고요. 저희가 나진이 교수님을 제외하고는 다 이제 한국 오디언스여서 저희가 꼭 필요한 경우를 제외하고는 여기에 나와 있는 발표자나 토론자들 본인이 원하신다면 영어로 하셔도 괜찮습니다만 한국말을 쓰도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 let me first can you hear us, Professor Nazzini? 이거 연결 되시나요? Let me first introduce the speakers and discussants today. Hello, Professor Nazzini. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us today. And it must be very early in the morning in London. Aren't you tired?
Hello, good afternoon. Sorry, I
통역으로 들으셔야 돼요. 통역으로.
통역으로
한국말 하십니다.
그래요? 네, 알겠습니다. 저보고 영어 하지 말라고 네, 그렇게 이제 얘기가 왔습니다. 그래서 첫 번째 세션의 주제는 EC안드로이드 케이스를 이제 Key Holdings, Factual Findings and Assumption이라는 이제 부제를 가지고 다루는 것인데요. 두 명의 발표자가 있습니다. 지금 여기 책의 순서에는 외국어대학교의 최여섭 교수님이 먼저 발표를 하시고 그 다음에 나진이 교수님이 발표를 하시는 것으로 되어 있는데요. 혹시나 모를 네트워크 문제가 있을 수도 있어서 나진이 교수님이 비디오 클립을 먼저 보내셨습니다. 그래서 제가 생각할 때는 이제 타임 매니지먼트라든지 두 분의 발표에 어쩔 수 없이 일부 중복되는 부분도 있고 하기 때문에 제가 최효석 교수님께 부탁을 드려서 나진이 교수님의 클립을 먼저 보고 그 다음에 최효석 교수님이 거기에 맞춰서 발표를 해주시는 걸로 그렇게 해주시기로 했습니다. 그리고 나진이 교수님은 이제 킹스 칼리지 런던의 교수님이시고요. 그 다음에 이제 최효석 교수님이 발표를 해주시고, 그 다음에 이제 두 분의 토론자가 있습니다. 첫 번째는 서울대학교 임용 교수님, 그리고 두 번째는 대구대학교의 임경수 교수님, 이렇게 각각 법학과 경제학 분야에서 시각으로 토론을 해주시겠습니다. 그럼 먼저 나진이 교수님의 발표부터 먼저 듣도록 하겠습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to participate in this seminar, albeit my participation is virtual today. I very much apologize that, to my regret, for reasons beyond my control, I could not come to Seoul today as much as I would want to do so, and I very much hope that as soon as possible, once the issues that have prevented me from being there today with you have been resolved, as I'm sure they will in due course, I will be able to come and talk about the issues discussed discuss today with you, with many of you in person. I would like to thank the organizers and the University of Stockholm for the invitation and for organizing such a topical seminar, such an important seminar on a very relevant and significant development in global competition policy, which is, of course, very much still EU focused as a development. I'm talking, of course, about the topic of my talk today, the ECandroid decision, but that should be carefully analyzed by jurisdictions around the world. There are specificities in relation to EU law, questions in relation to EU law that decision raises, but also significant policy questions that go beyond EU law. And I move now to slide 2. My talk will essentially be divided into 4 or 5 parts, rather. If you count the conclusions as an independent part itself, there's really 5 points that I would like to cover. First of all, I'd like to set the scene by making reference to certain principles of EU law that are very important to understand the background of the decision and some of our experience with the digital economy so far, before and including Android. Then I will focus quite a bit on the decision of the European Commission in Android, because this is what my main task this afternoon is, to talk about the specificities of that decision and a bit of detail about that decision. I will then move on to raise a few legal questions that are in a way EU legal questions, but they could apply more broadly, and certainly there are issues on which more broadly a reflection is, I would say, much appropriate. And then moving on to some policy questions, and then the 5th part, as it were, a summary of my key findings and conclusions. So in terms of setting the scene, let's move to the next slide. Just a few words about the EU law framework. Let's go to slide 4. So the EU legal framework is based on competition provisions in the EU treaties, of which Article 1.2, the prohibition of abuse of dominance, that has been applied by the European Commission in Android, is 1. But these competition rules, these competition provisions in our treaties have an overall objective and a unifying objective, which is that of ensuring that competition in the internal market is not distorted. That's what the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union says. But of course, that's not the end of the matter, is it? Because competition not distorted in the internal market may mean everything and nothing. The internal market itself is not an end, it's a means to an end. And the end of the internal market, and indeed of all EU policies, is the well-being of the people of Europe. That's what the Treaty on the European Union says. And I would strongly suggest, that's the conclusion of previous studies conducted since 15 years ago, that the objective of EU competition law overall is increasing productivity, increasing social welfare, taking into account the overall values of the treaties for the benefit of the economy as a whole. That does have, as we shall see, an important implication, because it does mean, in my view, that you cannot analyze competition law problems in narrowly defined markets without looking at the broader economic implications of decisions within, of course, the confines of the law. We will get that. We'll get to that in due course. I mentioned about Article 1.2. The definition of abuse in Article 1.2 is very general. Any abuse of a dominant position is prohibited. again, it means all end button. The court clarified this concept in relation to exclusionary abuses, in particular in a case called Hoffman-La-Roche. But in that case as well, the court didn't say that much either. The court said that it is an abuse of dominance by a dominant firm to hinder competition or to prevent the maintenance of competition on the market through means other than competition on merits. And the question is what it means. We have had a few more recent developments in EU competition law, both Denmark one and Intel, two important cases by the Grand Chamber of the Court of Justice of the European Union, the highest court in the Union. And these cases state the principle that EU competition law, in particular Article 1 to the abuse of dominance prohibition, does not protect and should not protect less efficient competitors. And the final point, I think, which is relevant for today, is that under EU law, conduct that excludes competitors can be objectively justified if it produces efficiencies, lowers costs, increases innovation, and so on. It's necessary for the efficiencies, it's the least anti-competitive way to achieve the efficiencies, and the benefits of the conduct outweigh the detriment to consumers that the conduct causes or may cause. Now, I make a step back here, if I may, and just to mention that in digital merger cases, the European Commission has applied EU competition law. This is the merger regime, the merger regulation, in a way which was quite flexible. I move on to slide 5, please. In a way which is quite flexible and recognizing the dynamic nature of digital markets and the strong competition taking place among players. For example, this is what the Commission said in Facebook WhatsApp. High market shares are not indicative of market power necessarily because these are fast-moving markets. Again, in Google and Click, the Commission said that in relation to data, there were several competitors that from which data could be purchased, and also looked at the search engine and ad server markets and concluded that these were quite competitive markets. In Microsoft and Yahoo, the Commission looked beyond the narrow effects of the merger on narrowly defined markets and considered that the merger would allow Microsoft to better compete with Google, looking at ecosystems more broadly. Let's move to slide 6, please. And the approach, however, in abuse of dominance cases has been significantly stricter. The Commission has taken the view that, broadly speaking, conduct that is capable of excluding competitors and not necessarily as efficient competitors is abusive, and it is now for the dominant firm to demonstrate with evidence that its conduct is objectively justified, generates efficiency, makes sense in terms of the business model and in relation to the broader working and dynamics of competition in the ecosystem. A few examples of this approach, slide 7 please. Google search, the shopping case. The European Commission in this case decided that Google abused its dominant position in 13 national markets for general search services within the European Economic Area by positioning and displaying in its general search result pages its own comparison shopping services in a way which was better, more prominent, more favorable than competing services. Slide 8 please. Google search AdSense, very recent decision. The European Commission here held that Google had breached the abuse of dominance prohibition by entering into agreements with websites, providing for contractual exclusivity and later softer forms of preferential treatment of Google's intermediate search verticals. Next slide, please, number 9. Let's now come to Google Android, very first general overview. European Commission in this decision found that Google was dominant in 2 markets, essentially in 2 markets. National markets for general search services and the worldwide market, excluding China, who is operating in China, for Android app stores. So 2 markets. General services, general search services, global, and national, the general search services, national, so in reality these are several markets, each for each member state, and app stores for Android, which is, however, global. Moving on to slide 10, the European Commission decided that the following conduct was abusive. So there are several abuses in Google Android, several types of conduct that are considered abusive. So there are 2 types of abuses, I would say. First of all, the type of the Google search app with the Play Store, and this was an abuse of dominant position in Android app stores. Then there was the time of the mobile web browser Google Chrome with the Play Store and the Google Search app. This was also an abuse of dominance in Android app stores. It's very similar abuse in reality. We can move to slide 11. Then there was another quasi-time abuse, I would say, making the licensing of the Play Store and the Google Search app conditional on the anti-fragmentation obligations in the Google so-called anti-fragmentation agreements or AFAs, abuse of dominance. And this was an abuse of dominance in Android app stores and search. What are these anti-fragmentation agreements? These are agreements between Google and the original equipment manufacturers, whereby if the original equipment manufacturer acquired the license to pre-install the Google Mobile Suite, so the Play Store with the Google Search app and Chrome, they had to enter into agreements whereby they committed not to ship devices with versions of Android which did not comply with certain requirements. So one has to be careful here, not the version of Android or one given version of Android provided by Google. Any version of Android could be used as long as it was complying with the minimum requirements in the ASA, in the Anti-Fragmentation Agreement. And the other important thing to bear in mind, of course, this was not a condition of obtaining Android, which therefore remains open source and always was open source. It was a condition of getting the Google Mobile Suite and therefore the App Store. And finally, the Commission held that it was abusive for Google to grant hardware manufacturers and mobile network operators and nodes revenue share payments conditional on the pre-installation of no competing general search service. This was an abuse of dominance in search. Again, this was conditional on the exclusive pre-installation, but not total exclusivity. So other apps could indeed be installed on these devices. Let's move on now to slide, this was slide 12, let's move now to slide 13. And let's now focus more in detail on the European Commission's decision. Slide 14, please. And what I want to do is really to look at what legal principles the Commission applied. So first of all, let's have a look at the time of the Google search app with the Play Store. The first thing to say here, and this actually applies to all abuses, that the focus of the European Commission is very much the search market. That's where the problem in the view of the European Commission lies. Even this abuse has as an effect, the Commission says, the restriction of competition and competitive harm in the general search markets. So it's not that much on the market for licensable operating system for smart devices, the market for Android, in other words, but the market for search. Here the Commission said, because pre-installation is a very important channel of distribution of general search services on smart mobile devices, competing search engines cannot offset the competitive advantage that Google has by tying Play Store with Google search. There are clearly other ways of getting search apps on Android devices, downloading, for example, is the main one, but there are others. But none of them is as good as the time of Google search with Play Store. And therefore, there is potential harm to competitors in search. Let's move on to slide 16. So what's important here is that the Commission applies a legal test which is capability to foreclose. And it's important that I stress that I am not saying anything controversial here, because the Commission itself says so. And I quote from the decision here. The Commission is not required to demonstrate in a general manner that there would have been greater competition absent the time of the Google search app with the Play Store. Rather, the Commission is required to demonstrate that the time is capable of restricting competition on the relevant markets, namely national markets for general services. So capable of restricting competition. And there is no counterfactual analysis. The Commission is not required to prove that there would be greater competition absent the time. I come back to this point because I think it's very important. Let's move to slide 16. Is there any competitive harm identified in this decision? And by competitive harm, I don't mean harm to competitors. I mean harm to the parameters of competition. What are the parameters of competition? In other words, why do we have competition? Why do we like competition? Why do we protect competition? Why do we have competition authorities? Because competition enhances and it's good for price, output, innovation, and quality. With healthy competition, we can expect higher output, lower prices, higher quality, higher innovation, and vice versa with competition is restricted. So by competitive harm, I mean, was there harm to the parameters of competition? And of course, in digital, what is important, or maybe more important than price and output, is innovation and quality. Now, the European Commission in the decision does state that Google's conduct contributes to the maintenance or strengthening of market power in search, increases entry barriers, deters innovation, and harms consumers by reducing their choice for competing search engines. But do read the decision carefully. Don't stop at general statements. The Commission adduces no evidence whatsoever of such competitive harm. And that's fine. I think the Commission itself said, we have just seen it, that the test that they are applying is harm to competitors, capability of excluding competitors. So when it comes to competitive harm, the Commission simply relies on the general theory that I have just actually explained. When we have more competition, we can expect, not necessarily more complicated than that. There may be other factors, but we can expect higher quality, lower prices, higher innovation, higher output. When competition is restricted, we can expect lower choice, lower quality, exclusion, and deterrence of innovation, and so forth. However, what is possible, or the reason why we have competition law, does not necessarily hold true in individual cases. I come back to that in my conclusions, but as a pointer already now, the question I think would be, is it really right to work on the assumption that potential harm to competitors equals market power, entry barriers, less innovation, and consumer harm? I leave for the time being this question. Oh, and let's move to slide 17. The second type of abuse is the type of Google Chrome with the Play Store and the Google search app. So I can be more, can go more quickly in relation to this abuse because the framework is very much similar to the previous abuse. The time provides Google with a significant advantage that competitors cannot offset, and the time causes competitive harm by deterring innovation, reducing consumer choice. It increases or maintains Google's market power in search, but actually, as I explained before, here as well, the framework is the same. There is evidence, and the Commission certainly understood that they had to prove capability to harm competitors, but there is no self-standing evidence of competitive harm. Let's move on to slide 18. This is interesting because now let's have a look at objective justification. So, what the dominant firm has to demonstrate with evidence if it wants to negate, so to speak, invalidate the prima facie case of abuse that the Commission has put forward. Here, Google relied on mainly three, I would say, heads of objective justification. First, the conduct was a legitimate way for Google to monetize its investments in Android and its non-revenue generating apps. So Android costed money and costs money to develop an update. It's licensed for free. Google is, of course, not a charitable organization. They have to recoup this investment. This was a way of recouping this investment, and the same applies to non-revenue generating apps. Second point, the conduct ensured the consistent out-of-the-box experience for consumers that get the Google mobile suite, and in this way, through improved products for users, Android devices can better compete with Apple. And the third point was that Google, in this way, could license Play Store for free because it could then monetize through its search services. And of course, licensing Play Store for free was valuable and is valuable for OEMs. The Commission rejected all these arguments, applying a very strict test, which is EU law. And there is a question, again, a question which I leave it open for the time being. Is this the right test? So strict efficiencies must be necessary, there must be no less anti-competitive way of achieving it. That the benefits to consumers must outweigh any anti-competitive harm and harm to consumers, and finally there must be no elimination of competition. In relation to the anti-fragmentation abuse, here again the European Commission applies a time framework, although the abuse is not technically time. The abuse is making the licensing of the Play Store and the Google search app conditional on anti-fragmentation obligations that I have described earlier, and this is an abuse of dominance because this prevents the emergence of Android phones Android forks are versions of Android that are not compatible with the minimum requirement in the anti-fragmentation agreements. And Android forks, therefore, Android forks providers are competitors that are potentially harmed. And remember, the test is always capability to foreclose. And let's move on now to slide 20. So slide 19, move to slide 20. In the anti-fragmentation abuse, the Commission goes a little bit further, including trying to adduce some evidence of competitive harm. For example, the European Commission says that there is evidence that certain players, such as Amazon, would have developed and commercialized Android forks in the absence of the conduct, and Android forks could have been a point of entry and expansion for competing search apps. And perhaps some of these forks could have provided additional functionalities. Still very much at the level of theory, but at least there is some evidence, for example, in relation to the Amazon case. This evidence is by and large disputed, I think, by Google, and the case is pending in court. As regards objective justification, here as well, several heads of objective justifications. I'll point some of them out. Slide 21. The anti-fragmentation obligations are necessary to ensure the interoperability of the Android ecosystem. Of course, if an open source software becomes highly differentiated, the benefits of interoperability are lost. Someone who writes an app for one version of Android will have to write a different app for another version of Android, and yet a different app for a third version of Android, and so on, fragmenting, therefore, the ecosystem and pushing up development costs. For example, the second point is very much similar to that, and it's also a matter of ensuring quality. Google claim, let's move on to slide 22. The anti-fragmentation obligations may also be necessary to prevent free riding, because Google invested in Android and continues to invest in Android, upgrading the system and providing training and releasing earlier source code, holding developer boot camps. The anti-fragmentation obligations, furthermore, that were very clear and were not intended to be misleading. So the point I want to make, there are a number of arguments that all relate to the functioning of the ecosystem and the dynamics of competition in this market. Let's see what the Commission did. The Commission, slide 23 please, the Commission rejected all these arguments on the basis that Google has not demonstrated that the test under EU law was met, in particular that the anti-fragmentation obligations and the fact that they were, the licensing of the Play Store was conditional on these obligations, was necessary to achieve any benefits. For example, the Commission said that it is relevant to make a comparison with Apple, BlackBerry, and Microsoft, because Apple, BlackBerry, and Microsoft have not adopted an open source business model, so they can do whatever they want with their proprietary systems, whereas because Google has adopted an open source model, it has to behave to stricter requirements, which sounds counterintuitive. I can see the very legal, from a very legalistic point of view, I can see the argument. I'm not saying I agree with the argument, but I can clearly see the argument. But let's look beyond that, especially when it comes to looking at this decision in Korea, for example, Republic of Korea, for example. Let's look beyond what may be the strict legal test under EU law. Is it reasonable to say, if you adopt a less anti-competitive, a more open business model that fosters competition, it creates all sorts of benefits, you then are held to stricter competition law standards. It's rather discouraged that the adoption of open source models, which it's, as I said, rather counterintuitive. Let's move to slide 24. This is the last abuse. Payments to original equipment manufacturers and mobile network operators on condition that they pre-installed no competing general search service on any device within an agreed portfolio. So there was not absolute exclusivity. Other search services could be installed by the user, for example, by downloading, but there was exclusive pre-installation by OEMs and MNOs within an agreed portfolio of devices. Here the Commission applies a test of intrinsic capability to foreclose as efficient competitors. So again, very legalistic approach. I understand the argument. I don't necessarily share it. In fact, I don't agree with it. But from a very legal perspective, it could be argued that the European case law requires the application of an as efficient competitor test to this kind of conditional payments, whereas in relation to time, the test is potential harm to any competitor, whether the competitor is as efficient or not. Again, I'll park this question here, as it were, and I will pick it up on it in a couple of minutes. Let's move on to slide 25. The Commission said that the conduct in question deterred innovation, both by competing search services and because of the reduced competitive pressure by Google itself. Therefore, this is an argument that this increased market power protected Google's market power. Again, the Commission does not offer any specific evidence of competitive harm. The Commission relies simply on a general theory whereby reduced competition is likely to deter innovation without proving that this occurred or was likely to have occurred on the facts of a case very similar to the previous framework. Let's move on to slide 26. In relation to objective justification, what was put forward in the case was the following. These conditional payments were necessary to convince OEMs and MNOs to produce the devices for the nascent Android ecosystem. Let's remember, Android is relatively new compared to Apple or BlackBerry, and it was necessary to launch Android or to provide incentives to OEMs and MNOs. It was necessary to, the payment in question, the type of payment in question was necessary to ensure that Google recouped its investment in Android. This is part of a broader, I would say, argument by the dominant firm in this case that because Android was developed at cost, significant cost, and is upgraded at cost, Google must be allowed to recoup this investment somehow. And third point, again, the point about competition with Apple. The payments are necessary to allow Google Android devices to compete against Apple's devices, because these payments, of course, lower the costs of OEMs and MNOs. And in this way, OEMs and MNOs, so Android manufacturers and Android network operators, mobile operators can invest in other services to make Android devices more attractive for users and therefore better compete with Apple, which is, by the way, an argument also in relation to free licensing of Android as open source, because OEMs and MNOs didn't have to develop their own operating system. They could therefore better invest more in devices and other services, and that allowed really Android to become a major competitor to Apple. Therefore, significantly lowering the cost of mobile devices and internet services for users. All these arguments, once again, were firmly rejected by the European Commission, in essence on the basis that they were not strictly necessary to achieve these objectives. These objectives could have been achieved in a different way, and also on the basis that Google has already put, so the Commission says its investment in Android doesn't have to continue profiting through this kind of conduct from the Android operating system. Let's move on now to the next slide, 27, and here I would like to raise some legal questions about the decision in Android. Slide 28, please. So I think the decision in Android does raise, it's a matter of EU law, even let's confine ourselves to EU law for a moment, some significant questions. These questions are therefore important for us in the EU, but they're also important for you to consider when you look at the decision and whether this is a good policy precedent or a bad policy precedent or simply a policy precedent to look at carefully and on which then you will have to make your own mind. First of all, based on the legal principles to be applied, the policy approach, and thirdly, and more importantly, I would suggest, in relation to actual dynamics of the market and the economy in each given jurisdiction. So let's start with the law then. First of all, I would say there is a significant question as to whether the European Commission was correct to focus only on licensable operating systems and exclude Apple's iOS from, first of all, market definition, but I think more importantly, from the analysis of the competitive effects of the conduct. At the end of the day, market definition is a tool to assess the competitive effects of the conduct anyway. So it is clear, that, to me at least, that one should have looked at competition beyond just the Android ecosystem. What the benefits of Android have been is, in particular, increased competition to Apple and therefore lower prices, better services across the mobile device, internet services, and mobile devices sector globally. Just ignoring that aspect or liquidating it, so to speak, very briefly, giving it a short shrift when rejecting objective justification arguments, I think was probably something that raises a question which is quite important. Secondly, the Commission only applies the as efficient competitor test to exclusivity payment. So not to the other abuses, for example, the anti-fragmentation abuses and the time abuses. Is that correct? Is that right? Or should rather EU competition law and competition policy more generally only protect as efficient competitors or competitors that could become as efficient as the dominant undertaking? Is that right to allow a subsidy from an efficient dominant undertaking to inefficient competitors? And of course we don't know in the Android decision whether there was a subsidy from an efficient dominant company to less efficient competitors, because the less efficient competitor test was not applied. But the question is, should it be applied so that we make sure that there is no such subsidy or subsidization of less efficient competitors? Third question. The standard that the Commission applies is capability to foreclose. That does not require proof of consumer harm to price, output, quality, innovation. Again, is that correct? Should we go further and ensure that when we look at conduct that harms competitors, perhaps also as efficient competitors, we also then verifying whether conduct is likely to harm the parameters of competition. Because at the end of the day, if there is no harm to price outputs, quality, or innovation, then why intervene? Question. And finally, is the bar for objective justification too high? Especially if all the European Commission has to prove is capability to foreclose, not even likelihood, even less actual foreclosure, but capability to foreclose. Is that right to put the bar for objective justification as high as it is? Let's move on now to slide 29 and some policy questions. I think the previous questions that I raised are also, in a sense, policy questions, but are also very specific legal questions that I think are extremely important under the law as well. But let's now look at the broader policy framework. Slide 30, please. Which are also significant issues to consider for other jurisdictions, such as South Korea, in my humble opinion. First of all, especially in the digital economy, I think the argument applies more generally, but especially in the digital economy, is it right to focus the competition analysis on narrow market definition and on narrow markets, national or global as they may be? And as I said, the focus really of the ECandroid decision was search. But is it right to do that, or should we not rather have a broader look at the implications of a certain conduct for neighboring market, for an entire ecosystem, for competition upstream, downstream, and so on? And here, of course, in Android, especially competition between Apple and Android devices was, I think, key to the case, but really rather overlooked in the decision. Secondly, as a policy point, I think one should consider the benefits of an open source system as against vertical integration, and avoid adopting policies that discourage open source systems and encourage a silo approach to innovation. So if we are saying that actually open source providers or licensors of open source software are held to a stricter standard than owners of proprietary and not open source systems and softwares, then we are discouraging open source models that are extremely beneficial to the economy. The benefits that the Android open source model has brought about, in particular for the Korean economy, but not only for the Korean economy, are very significant. Obviously, OEMs, I don't need to mention that in Korea there are very important players in this space, original equipment manufacturers, by obtaining a free open source operating system, saw their costs significantly reduced and could focus their investment efforts elsewhere to compete with the established players. App developers can develop apps throughout the world and distribute them on enormous numbers of devices without issues of interoperability. Consumers, of course, get better devices at much lower costs. And the economy as a whole benefits, not only because of these three types of benefits that I have just identified, but also because of job creation, shareholders' returns, innovation, use of internet and internet services by the wider population, which brings about even more economic benefits to all sectors of the economy. So let's not discourage open source by misguided competition policies. And my third policy point is that we should really consider whether maximizing social welfare and productivity across the whole economy for the benefit of the peoples of Europe or the people of Korea, for the benefit of everybody, businesses, consumers, shareholders, competitors, dominant undertakings that compete on the merits, is actually better served by a competition policy that does not subsidize less efficient competitors or competitors that cannot become as efficient as the dominant economy. And is better served by a competition policy that prohibits only business practices that are harmful to the parameters of competition, which is what we really care about: price, output, quality, and innovation. Let's move on to slide 31, key findings and conclusions, and I'll leave slide 32 now. The takeaways, I think, from my analysis of the decision are the following, 6 of them. First of all, the European Commission's decision in Google Android is heavily focused on effects on general search markets. So when search markets are different, that matters a lot, whether the findings and the approach of the Commission can be carried over or not. The second point is that competition between Android and Apple's vertically integrated model is essentially ignored. It's not that the Commission completely ignores it, but doesn't really engage seriously with the argument, in my view. Third point, the decision adopts 2 tests for timing abuses and the anti-fragmentation of use. The test is capability to foreclose any competitor, potential harm to anybody. And only for the revenue share use, the test is capability to foreclose as efficient competitor. Fourth point, there is no proof in the decision of harm to parameters of competition, price, output, quality, and innovation. The Commission indeed explicitly says that the test is capability to foreclose, full stop. There is a very, this is the fifth point, there is a very strict burden of proof on dominant undertakings in relation to objective justification. And I think I am trying to explain to you how much is in this objective justification box. It's a wide range of benefits that should be what really matters to competition. But the burden of adducing evidence is on the undertaking and is applied very strictly. And the legal test is very, very strict as well. In fact, in EU competition law, we only once, many years ago, in all cases, in a very small, to a very small extent, was an objective justification claim accepted, otherwise always rejected. And finally, significant legal and policy questions arise as to whether such an approach that the Commission has adopted is consistent with the competition regime that aims at maximizing social welfare and productivity across the economy for the benefit of all. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you.